Hello, good afternoon, or good morning. How is everybody doing today? It's Fallon, aka Amore the Poet, pound 24. I know I haven't made a video in a while. I had traumatic event happen. I don't know if you all are familiar. I know most of you who follow me are familiar that I lost my son almost 2 years ago, coming up next month, March 24th. But the end of last year, 4 days before Thanksgiving, I lost my mom abruptly. How I found out, my sister texted me actually, and I don't have like a really close relationship with my family. I'm the different one, and I'm okay with that. That's why I moved almost 1,000 miles away from New York to Chicago because I'm not a conformer, I'm a transformer. Hope you guys pick that up. Be like me, okay? So you could keep it moving in this life. Anyways, so my sister texted me like, call me when you get a chance. And I'm like, okay. The first thought that comes to mind, because we don't talk, is, something, it's an emergency, somebody, died or passed away or whatever. But I'm not thinking that, it's somebody in my family because, my son just passed. I'm like, who's making these decisions? Because they're out of order. But she texts me, so I'm like, my daughter's on the phone, FaceTiming her dad, and they're talking, and we're all just, in the living room, whatever. And I'm like, I call her back, and I'm like, this better be an emergency, and she's like, you can hear in her voice that she's upset, she's been crying. And I'm like, I called her name. I'm like, who died? Who died? And she's like, Fallon, no, mommy. And I'm like, what? Like, what? And then she told me she's like, they have been working on her for 45 minutes. And as an ER nurse, I already know that, the outcome is already deceased, expired. It is what it is. There's no way, to get around it. It just is what it is, And especially when you're in the healthcare field, you can understand a little bit more. I mean, it still was shocking to find out because it was unexpected. My mom was on dialysis. She did have, several health issues or, concerns going on with her. But she also was a woman that didn't stop moving until she stopped moving. So I'm going to kind of start a little bit like, I can only go back as far as 38 years because that's how long I was able to have a relationship with my mother. When I was born, my mom was addicted to crack cocaine or whatever. So it was kind of rough in the beginning, but I always loved my mom. Like, no matter the stories that were told about my mom, that was my mom. You could not take the relationship that I had with my mother. I don't care if she was in the streets. I don't care if she was smoking crack. I don't care if she was prostituting. I don't care if her jaw was twisting side to side. That was my mom. Kelly Smith was my mom. And I was grateful to have the type of mother that I had. So when I first came out or whatever, I was told I went to, excuse me, I went to rehab with my mom. It was like where she could take kids, and try to get better or whatever. I don't really remember it. I had to be about 1 year old. So moving forward, 2 years old, I ended up in foster care. And, we would get like weekly visits with my mom. Sometimes she would show up, sometimes she wouldn't. But that's how that was for about 2 years. And then somehow my sister, I have a sister that's a year under me. I have 6 sisters, but I have one that's a year under me. We went to live with my mother. And I remember, I never seen my mom do crack. I never seen the crack in our house. When I was a little girl, I remember my mom, walking me to preschool When she picked me up, she had a blow pop because those were popular. They were like, what, a quarter back in the day in the 80s or whatever. And she'd have my little sister and we go home and my mom would cook dinner. I remember, she would cook pork chops, mashed potatoes and gravy. And, I remember these good things. I remember, I would say a cuss word and she would try to rinse my mouth out with soap, or, she was a good mom. Even though she had, an addiction, she still, held the title of mom. So eventually, I guess one day, she had to go get, re-up or whatever. Okay. And my sister and I were in the back of a car, and it was kind of like late at night, maybe 12, 1, somewhere in between there, whatever. And she left us in the car and she ran upstairs to go get her stuff or whatever. And in between time, somehow my grandmother was outside, same hours, and seen us in the car and took us. And that was our road to living with our grandmother and being adopted by my grandmother and physically being taken away from my mother. But that didn't stop me from having a relationship with my mom. I didn't care. As I grew up, it was rough living with my grandma, being molested, you know what I'm saying? And, physically abused, mentally abused, emotionally abused by the molester and everything like that. My mom was in and out of jail. She was in and out of the streets or whatever. But she was somehow always there. Like, if I went out, because as I grew up into a young adult and I became a teenager, you stop following curfew, you stop listening, you get rebellious, especially when certain things are happening in the household. You grow up a little bit faster than you are supposed to be and is expected. But when the grown-ups are not paying attention to what's going on in their own household, they won't even notice how the child is, changing with their behaviors, with their mannerisms and things like that, because they're so caught up in whatever they're doing that they don't even know what's going on. And that's kind of how it was. So me raising my sisters while, my grandmother and her boyfriend were out gambling and stuff like that, I felt like an adult. So when she came home, it was time for me to go out. Yeah, it was 10 o'clock at night, but it was time for me to go out. And when I went out, I knew that my mom was in the streets. So I knew that I was going to be okay. It didn't matter. Like, my mom, she was one of the cleanest drug users that I have ever ran into or came across still to this day. Okay. My mom always kept an apartment. She always had a bed. She always had furniture. If I needed something to eat, she had money to give me something to eat, or she had food in her fridge. She took showers all the time. She was clean. You didn't touch her stuff. She was Lysol and everything. Like, my mom was just a neat freak, and she was also addicted to drugs. So I moved to Chicago when I was about 17 years old, and my mom still was like on drugs, off drugs, in, out of jail or whatever. She had 2 more kids after I left, and the last kid, she had got diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and she was like in fluid overload, end-stage renal disease, and she needed to get put on dialysis. And this was the event that my mom needed in order to change her life. So after my mom was put on dialysis, she turned to the church. And I've never seen anybody change the way my mom changed, but I was on her path with her the whole time. So I'm grateful that I got to see the change. When I tell you the change that occurred within my mother, like, she stopped doing everything that was not right completely. I mean, sex, cigarettes, cussing, drugs, everything. She literally did a 360 when she decided to change her life and her ways. She started going to church every single Sunday. She started doing Bible studies. When COVID hit, the world, she was doing her videos, She were doing online classes, online sermons, and everything. She was still being righteous and practicing her word and abiding by the law that she thought was right for what she believed and how she would stay clean and how she would stay healthy. And my mom did this for 8 years until she passed. She came out to Chicago a few times, like to visit me. It was like the first time she even left New York, got out and went somewhere to travel clean and sober because she wanted to do something for her kid. I would tell my mom all the time, because I'm the only one that accepted my mom for who she was whenever she was that person. So I would tell her, like, Mom, you need to understand that you only have one kid, me. That's it. And she would always say, Fallon, no, I have 7 children. I have 7 girls, and I love each and every one of you, regardless of the relationship that we may have. And I was just like, how? But I understand now, because that's what you do. You love people for who they are, and that's what type of person my mom was. So no wonder why I'm the same way. And so in August, just the 2021, she came out here and we took a trip to Vegas. It was her first trip to Vegas, mine too, but I got to do that with my mom. My mom passed, like I said, 4 days before Thanksgiving, and we weren't talking. We had gotten an argument a couple, like maybe 6 weeks prior to her dying, which kind of hurt me in the beginning. You understand, like to get in an argument with somebody you love and then they pass away. So I hold on to it. I don't feel guilty. I don't beat myself up about it, because the situation happened. I can't change it. It's in the past. I still have to move forward. And it's just crazy, because the whole time that my mom and I were actually not talking, I had chest pain for the whole time. Like, it was just like, it was really weird. And then when I found out that she passed, it kind of like subsided, and then it just went away. And I don't know if that's, the universe or somebody telling me, you got to pick up on this lesson right here. You just don't, go out being angry. You just don't end relationships or conversations being angry. It's just not appropriate. It doesn't feel good. And there's situations like this that can happen. So the day actually that my mom passed, as I was told, she had got up, she called one of my other sisters, because my mom was taking care of one of my nieces. And she called her that morning to tell her, you need to come and get your daughter because I'm not feeling well. And it was crazy, because even though my mom was not feeling up to par, was not 100%, she still got up that Sunday morning to go to church and serve the Lord. She had a baby shower, one of my other sisters, pregnant, to go to later on that afternoon. And she felt, if I can get up and go to that baby shower, I've got to get up and go to church. And that's what she did. My mom got up and went to church. She was standing up at church, praising the Lord, and all of a sudden she sat down, and that's when my mom passed. She praised the Lord and she danced to her destination. And they knew something was wrong, because my mom doesn't sit down when she's serving and praising and doing, the hallelujah, praise the Lord stuff, and she does not sit down. Soon as she gets in that church, she's stomping, clapping, jumping, shouting, and all of that. So that's where she passed. My mom did not die in the streets as a crack kid. My mom died in the church as a deacon. She died serving the Lord. She showed people, no matter what, if he did it for her, as she would say, he can do it for anybody. My mom was in the streets for 35 years. I'm 38. So the majority of my life she was in the streets. I still loved her no matter what. I was on that journey with her. But I'm saying 35 years being addicted to crack cocaine doesn't usually turn out in the church with 8 years clean and sober. But it's possible. So when my mom passed, I went out there. We all came together, the 7 of us. We actually carried the casket to the grave site where she rests. And then I had a chance to go to my mom's apartment. It wasn't really that I wanted anything. I'm not the type of family member like, oh, somebody dies, like, let me go see what I can get. But I knew that there was probably some information that I might have wanted to know that I didn't get to know, or I didn't get the answers why she was here. So my mom had started school. She was very, very active prior to her passing. She had like 2, 3, 4 jobs sometimes at a time. She was taking care of my niece. She also took care of other people's kids, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. She did some home health with some older ladies, and then she also started school. And what I found when I went to my mom's apartment was an assignment. And the assignment that the teacher had the students write was their story. The story my mom chose to write was her childhood to her adult life, which I never really heard, and I know my mom never wanted to incriminate my grandmother, regardless if what happened was right or wrong. She wanted everyone of her kids to love her mom, their grandmother, and hold her on the pedestal as everyone did. But my mom, I don't know if she knows how much I held her on a pedestal as well as my mom. And that's period. My grandma had her title, but I could pick up on stuff that wasn't right. And my mom had her title. My mom was very righteous, never lied. If you wanted to know something, go to her, because she had the answers and she knew. If you didn't want to know something, but you knew she knew, don't ask her, because she's going to tell you what you need to hear and what the truth is. That's just how she was. So when I sat there and I read this story, I cried. Just tears rolling down my face, because I knew deep down inside that my mom being out in them streets for so long and acting the way she was acting and moving the way she was moving was deeper than what I knew from the outside looking in. But my mom never wanted to say anything, and she never did, about my grandmother. And in the story, it seems though we had the same life. So my mom explained in her story that she was 15 years old when her mother, my grandmother, went to a house. Her and her brother, my uncle, were left in the car. My mom said she had got tired of waiting downstairs for her mom, my grandmother, and she went upstairs. She said nobody saw her because everybody was busy sleeping. But she realized and became aware that everybody was doped up and nodding, not just sleeping. And she continued to walk through the house until she saw her mother. And what she saw was her mother getting a heroin needle in her arm. And that was the start of my mom's 35-year addiction and insanity in the streets. So you never know why, who, what, when, where, whatever. You can't just judge people. You got to talk to people. You got to, sit down and try to understand if you don't. Or leave people alone, because you never know. There's people like this sitting right next to you in your household, and you don't even know the person that you're living with. Yes, you should be aware of yourself and do self-inventory and all that stuff, but you need to be mindful of other people. Everybody on this earth deserves to be loved, deserves to be treated fairly, deserves, to be treated with righteousness. Now, if you're not giving off that, no, you don't deserve that back. You do not. I'm sorry. If you just sit, that's what I believe. You can believe something else. It is what it is. Keep it moving. Everybody's entitled. But if you pushing out good energy and, inspiration, motivation, that comes back to you. It does. And what you have, you can't sit closed off with stuff that happened to you. Let it eat you up inside and just live life miserably, in denial, feeling guilty. You got to get it out. Your story, the things you have to say, helps other people. You may not know, you may not realize it, it may not even feel like it, but it does. And that's the reason why I said I got to come back on here and do videos, because before my mom passed, she told me, she was like, Fallon, I know you may not have 1,000,001 followers or subscribers or whatever, but she said, know that when you talk, you are helping somebody. They are listening to you. And I was like, okay, Mom, but every day since she's passed and I have not done a video, all I hear is, you're helping somebody, but you're not, because you're not doing the video. Okay, Mom, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Next day, you're helping somebody, but you're not, because you still didn't do a video. I'm like, let me get on here and do this video, because she's going to pop up knocking at the door and there's not going to be nobody there, but I'm going to know. So, with that, when my mom passed, I wrote her a poem, because that's what I'm about, writing poetry and getting my feelings out. So, here's the poem that I wrote to my mom. Hey, Mom, I don't even know where to start. You were so vibrant, so how was it your time to depart? You would definitely say God doesn't make a mistake, but Mom, my heart wasn't ready for this break. From as far back as I can remember, you were always there. So Mom, really, why are you not here? Life isn't fair. Walking from preschool, blow pop in hand with my little sister, I was always proud to be your daughter. I was little Twister. Mom, I don't know anybody that was in the streets and held it down like you. Clean clothes, clean body, frame of mind, in an apartment too. Mom, you always had a stash to get me something to eat. No matter what, you were always neat. High school days were so much fun because you lived across the street. That truancy officer never got me, wasn't fast enough on his feet. I was petrified the first time I got locked up, sitting on that hill, but they knew whose daughter I was, so mess with me at your own free will. There would be times we weren't talking, and you called to see if I was okay. Your motherly instincts picking up that her child wasn't having a good day. As the years went by, you made a change that would blow others' mind. You gave up the street life. You were done with being confined. You put down the drugs, picked up the Bible, and never put it down. You made up your mind. You stuck to your choice, and you wore your crown. Mom, I'm so proud of you for making it through all that you've been through. You didn't do a 180 degree. You did a 360 degree. You showed them how to do it, boo. Mom, you always say you only live once, so enjoy it while you're here. I'm glad you're not suffering in any way, and death you no longer fear. The holidays were meant for your mother and grandson this year. Your strong voice, distinct laugh will forever ring in my ear. I love you, Mom, and will miss you every day. Make sure you meet me when it's time for me to make it that way. Mother, you touched so many lives during your time here on earth. Mom, you are an idol, a legend. This world will never forget your worth. You never stopped moving until it was your time to rest. Whatever you were doing, you always did your best. Even though I wasn't always a great daughter, you never stopped being my mother. I'm grateful for you giving me life, even though I didn't get one brother. Until we meet again, Mom, I love you with all of my heart. This isn't the end. We will have a fresh new start. I love you, Mom, and we'll see you again. Love always, your firstborn, the one and only Felon. So I did read that at her funeral, or her little viewing and stuff like that. I got to go out there and pick out her tombstone and have a balloon let off and all that good stuff. But um make sure you try to love people. Try to mend relationships if you can. Um, if you can't, sometimes you may need to walk away from the situation, come back to the situation. Let stuff pan out a little while before escalates into a problem that it doesn't have to. Love people, show empathy, listen, try to relate. If you can't relate, try to understand. You know, family isn't always the people you grew up with. So if you don't have a mom and you just have somebody, a guardian, or you just have somebody, love that person, show them that you love them, let them feel that you love them. It's okay, like it really is. So I hope everyone continues to check on your mental health, make sure everything from head to toe is doing all right. It's up to par. You're getting your exercise, your diet, everything is good, because you shouldn't put things in that ain't good for the tutor. But with that, I love you guys. I will see you guys. Not sure when. Probably I'll try to do one like every month or just whenever I feel like it, so I don't have that ringing voice in my head or whatever. But I love you guys and see you guys soon.